Hey guys, this is Josh Peak. I'm the host of the Josh Peak Show, and today I have a special guest, Kelley. Cole and I were texting back and forth, and a lot of times I batch my podcast where I'll schedule everything for a Monday and have 4 or 5 interviews, whatever. Sometimes though, I get a text or a private message, and we start talking, and I'm like, hey man, let's record this on a podcast. Sometimes they're not even scheduled. If I feel moved to do something like this. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. And so Cole, I really enjoyed talking with about a variety of different things. USA Wrestling, let's let the kids wrestle, and start opening up some states. At this point, I think I think people are ready to get moving and get things going. And you're starting to see it in a lot of states, especially in Oklahoma, in Utah, places like that. So we talked about that, talked about a little bit about politics, and also business as well. So I think you're really going to enjoy this show. I've got a lot of good shows coming up. On my Facebook feed, I've had a lot of people. I put a post out, about cryptocurrency and who I should interview if I was going to do that. And so I got a lot of response on that. So I've reached out some people. We've been talking. So I've got a few folks scheduled to do that, which I think. I'm going to create a series on cryptocurrency on this podcast, maybe do 4, 5, 6 shows and just focus on cryptocurrency and why you should be in it, what it is, what is the blockchain. There's a lot of questions, that I think people want answered. And so it'll be more of an educational piece. And anyways, if you want to find more about me on social media, you can do that. My Instagram is at Josh Peak, Twitter, it's at Josh Peak, YouTube, Ask Josh Peak, and then also go if you want resources on how to grow a business, how to be successful in business, and you need help in doing that, you can go to my website, joshpeak.com. I have plenty of tools there that can help you get started. If you need help, always reach out to me. I've got I run a big agency, and but I'll make time. I love helping people out and being successful in whatever endeavor they're doing. So again, I hope you enjoy this show. I think you will. It's with Kelley. You guys have a great day.
Josh Peak Show.
Hey everybody, this is Josh Peak. Welcome to the Josh Peak Show, where I'm your host. And today we have Kelley, and some really interesting news going on in the wrestling world, obviously with this COVID going on. But I'm excited to have you on here, Cole. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do? I mean, I see that, obviously you're a tournament director of the Rumble Wrestling Tournament, and you sent a message out today that was pretty exciting. So it's good to have you on.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm excited to be on. We have a lot in common, Josh. We both love wrestling and we both love politics. So, you and I follow each other and interact quite a bit on social media, and it's good to talk with you. So, but yeah, I run a couple of events. The one recently that I'm really excited about is the Rockwell Rumble. Mm-hmm. It's traditionally been a high school tournament. It's a bracketed tournament, so it's not a dual tournament, but it's a bracketed tournament. And last year we had 77 teams from 7 different states. We had Clovis, California that won the event, and Windsor, Colorado that was the runner-up. And so, it's high quality event, a lot of good wrestlers that have been attending our event. And when you're an event manager in this climate right now with COVID, it's scary. It's a little bit you don't know what's coming down. And for a long time, I've made the decision that I'm not going to wait for the National Federation or the Utah High School Activities Association to make decisions. I'm going to move forward in a way that I think we can continue to provide the event and create the opportunities for kids to compete.
So what's the environment like out where you're at right now in Utah?
I think Utah's one of the more conservative states. We're definitely a red state here. We have a Republican governor, and I don't know how political or unpolitical you want me to get on this podcast, but
I'm fine. I mean, you guys like what you want.
I've done a lot of research, and I feel in a lot of ways that it's coming down to politics. If you're in a blue state, you're not playing high school sports. If you're in a red state, we're playing. And I think it's unfortunate that politicians are playing politics with kids' lives. I really do. And I've done enough research with the data to feel like, it's safe for kids to play. And I think kids need to be out, and they need to be active, and they need to, for their mental health as much as anything, to be able to have a normal high school experience. And I've got a son who's a senior, and that's been a big part of my motivation. Is I want him to have as normal a high school experience as we can through this. And he's grown up running this event with me. He's grown up, rolling out mats. He's grown up taping mats. He's grown up towel tapping, referees. And so this is an event that is more than just an opportunity for him to compete. It's the event that he's grown up, being a part of. And so I wanted to make sure that we could, make things work. So, with the climate in Utah, kids are back to school. We're competing. We've had in Utah two major wrestling events. We held our Greco and freestyle state tournament, and we opened it up actually to other states, even though it was a Utah state tournament. And we had good participation with that. And then we held Western States here, which was an open tournament again for kids to travel in, and had good numbers for that. So we've held a couple of events, and they've been decent sized events in a professional venue, not a high school, gymnasium, and they've gone well. So those were both in July that we held those. So
yeah, we almost came up to one of them. There's some friends of ours that they're up there at Ivanov's up in Sioux Plains.
Oh, right on, yeah.
And then some friends of ours there in Colorado said that was amazing. Both of them were great tournaments.
Yeah.
We should have came. We had the Reno tournament here in Tulsa that had quite a few people. So Oklahoma and Utah are similar. We're a state that had 77 counties. I think we're the only state had every 77 all counties went red. So we didn't have one county that's went blue in a long time. And so we're pretty conservative. I mean, they love the wrestling in Oklahoma. Right. They love their football in Oklahoma. So it looks like we're doing a pretty good job as far as getting things going back. I wouldn't say normal. I mean, we're definitely not normal. It's not wide open.
Well, and that's why, something I'm working with right now. I've been working with instead of sanctioning my event through the National Federation and through the Utah High School Activities Association. And I'm not trying to do this to create enemies or to, but I know that there's a lot of pressures from governments, and they're tied to those governments to keep it limited, the opportunities. And if I sanction my event through the Utah High School Activities Association, the only athletes that can compete in that tournament then are kids that are competing for their high school teams. And if California is a good example, in California, they're not going to be starting their wrestling season until April. Wow. I had a coach from New Mexico that reached out to me. And the same thing, they're not going to be starting their high school wrestling season until April. And so if a kid from New Mexico wants to come to our event, he's not going to be able to do that if I sanction it through the National High School Federation or the Utah High School Activities Association. But if I sanction that event through USA Wrestling, that wrestler has the opportunity to come and compete as an independent wrestler.
See, so that could happen here in Oklahoma. I'm not saying it will. But if OSSAA decides they're not going to have a state tournament, USA could have a high school state tournament.
Right.
Okay, USA could have and that could be interesting, because who's to say they may not like it more and maybe want to go that route at some point. We homeschool. So the only reason that we, and I think a lot of people would even want to participate in a high school in some ways is because of athletics. I know in Idaho they have the Tebow bill, in Florida they have the Tebow bill. where it allows a young man or girl, whatever, if they want to participate in wrestling or volleyball or whatever, if they live in that district and they pay taxes, then they can go to that school to participate in school activities.
Right. And they do that in Utah as well. So if you're a homeschool athlete, you have to compete in your boundary school. So you can't choose which school you want to compete for. And that's actually a little more strict than somebody who is in the public school system. If you're a homeschool kid, you can compete in your boundary school on those high school teams.
Yeah, we're trying to pass that here in Oklahoma. I've worked with a U.S. congressman on I do a lot of digital marketing for politicians, and which is interesting, and then also portfolio businesses. So we're trying to pass that here in Oklahoma. It's election cycle, so they're not going to bring it up until February. But it'd be nice to have that here in Oklahoma. Like 37 states has it. We don't, and I understand why. A lot of them are, the homeschooling parents are going, well, if you do that, that may open up where the state can tell us how to educate our kids and whatever. Which I see their concern. However, it's an opt-in bill. So if you opt into it, then you have to meet a certain criteria. If you don't, you can still homeschool and do whatever, and not participate in it. I think things are changing though. But so you teach and coach, right? At a school.
Yeah. I teach at a public high school. I teach at American Fork High School here in Utah. I love my job. I love what I do. I teach finance. You can see my board behind me there. It's a little scenario where I do rich and able and talk about just money and finance. But I buck the system a lot. I work in a system that I don't agree with, and it can be frustrating at times, but I like the interaction that I have with kids. I like the opportunity I get to work with kids, but I often disagree with, the system and what's going on and the decision making and a lot of the politics that surround education.
Well, what's interesting about that is you adapted to TikTok way before a lot of people did. So you kind of went viral on there. I mean, you had a lot of views, and I think it's interesting how you took finance and in education and did it. You accomplished what you wanted to with it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and basically, it really wasn't any brilliant idea. I saw that my own kids were, using TikTok, and I saw that my students were, into TikTok, and I just said, I'm generally of the opinion I want to go to where students are and try to meet them there and try to help them, learn what I think is important. And so I said to my students first day of class last year, hey, we're going to do some TikToks, and they got pretty excited about that. And I think they thought I was going to sing and dance, and I didn't do much singing and dancing. I stand in front of a whiteboard and I do a quick 60-second finance lesson, and yeah, it went viral pretty quick.
It was cool. Yeah, because I got on there. Usually I'm an early adopter, so my kids and everybody was on there before I was this time, and then I saw yours, and I'm like, this is brilliant. This is I like it. So what? So did they shut it down already? As far as is your account no longer, or can you still?
No, I've still been posting on there a little bit. I actually when they shut us down and we quarantined and it's been 5 months that I haven't been a teacher in a lot of ways. I guess I did the online thing, but I like to interact with the kids and so yeah, I hadn't put much on there for about a 5-month period. One thing that I did during the quarantine, I did a lot of, is because my students knew that I was there and I was there, I would go live, and the students would come on and join me, and and I'd do some lectures and do some things live with them, which was fun. But I didn't post a lot of videos. But with the new school year starting up, I've started throwing some more content up.
So what do you think? Do you think that, I didn't really have any major questions. I'm just going off the cuff of what comes to my mind.
Or
So if you, as far as the online schooling, you see a lot of people that are going, I just don't like it. My kids are not getting that social interaction. But then you have the other people that are saying, this is pretty cool. I mean, they can do it right there in their house. 2:00, they go to wrestling practice, and I think it's good in both ways. But I can see the positives and negatives. I mean, what are your thoughts on the online version?
the thing there's a lot of fads that go through education, and that's always been a frustration of mine. But one of the things when I was a student, and I was going through an education program, one of the classes that I took that I think was one of the most valuable classes that I've taken talked about learning styles, and they broke it down into 7 different learning styles back then. Some people learn with their hands, and some people learn by discussing, and I think I think one of the biggest frustrations that I have with education in the traditional sense is that we really only appeal to 2 different learning styles. And if you're somebody who learns that way, you're labeled as an excellent student, right? And you're getting 4.0s, and and you're having a lot of success in education. Sorry, that's intercom at the school here.
You're fine.
Again, please call extension 713.
But kids learn differently, and that's where I feel like my son, that's a senior in high school right now, for example, when it comes to book work, when it comes to sitting in a classroom and learning in that way, he doesn't do as well. But the kid bought 2 motorcycles this year. When it comes to mechanical stuff, and see, I do learn fairly well that way. But he bought 2 motorcycles. He tore them apart and picked them both up, and sold one of them to pay for both, for both of them. And I'm like, awesome. I open up the hood of a car and I look inside and I just clap, because I really have no idea what's going on under there. And I applaud people that do.
Yeah.
And he was able to teach himself really how to take apart an engine and put it back together, and that is intelligence, and it's not the intelligence that we promote in a traditional school setting, so that's I feel like that education in a lot of ways pigeonholes learning styles, and I there's ways to reach out and allow more kids the opportunity to learn the way that they need to learn. So online, there are kids that are going to learn better that way, and there's others that are going to say, no way, I got to have the interaction.
Yeah. So. Well, we do have an online. We have a few online.
Range. You need to move the vehicle immediately, or it will be towed.
But we're
Must be moved to the boarding range immediately.
I'll just tell you, man. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, since we've homeschooled, we've had our own curriculum that we'll put together, and but this curriculum is pretty interesting, and I like it. I really do. I think it can take a kid that maybe was falling behind and has a chance to catch up. But I could also see where a kid, I was a social person, so for me it was like I don't know if online would have been for me, but for some kids I can definitely see that it can. And I personally, I like the disruption a little bit. I like that they, in Oklahoma now, it's like they're almost, and they're not telling the kids they have to, but I think to slow down some of the COVID, I think that they're okay. Well, if the majority of people, if you guys would do it virtual, well, then it'd be better for everybody. But then okay, but 2:00, come back. We have basketball practice, wrestling practice, whatever. I'm like, how does that make any sense? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, none of this really makes sense. I think it's been politicized totally.
Absolutely. I for your listeners that don't follow me on Facebook, I know you do, but I'm a little bit of a nerd, and when I have a question, I'm going to go find it, and I've become so cynical about the media that I don't trust anything that I'm reading.
Mhm.
I'll read it because I think they set the narrative oftentimes, but I'll read it, but I don't trust it. And so I want to try to go. I want to try to go to original sources. I want to try to go. If somebody says that this person said this in an interview, I want to go find that interview.
Mhm.
I want to go listen to exactly what they said and in what context did they say it. And so I've been looking at numbers and I said, okay, I'm going to take a number of factors. One thing I would oftentimes say is, I feel like this is political, and I would compare two states and I would say, look at this state and look at this state
Mhm.
and compare those two. And then I'd get people saying, well, that's because this state is more dense.
Yep.
Well, and I'd say, oh, okay, then tell me what two states you want to look at. And this is where, I geeked out one day when my wife was working, and I said, all right, I'm gonna do some research here. And I looked at unemployment rates. I looked at deaths per 1 million. I looked at density. I looked at whether you had a Republican or a Democrat governor, whether you went for Hillary or you went for Trump, and just did a research and pulled together, a ton of stuff. And it's crazy to me how if you take a state with similar density, and I think I did one with Oklahoma. Did you see did I do Oklahoma in one?
I think you did. I think you did.
And I think I looked at Oklahoma, and maybe I threw Iowa in there. And I feel like there was one more state that I did with Oklahoma. But when you look at the comparison between a red state and a blue state, it's like, why are the blue states unemployed? The bottom 10 unemployment states, out of the bottom 10, 7 of them are blue states. One is a red state and the other 2 are purple. The top 10 unemployment, 7 of them are red, 3 of them are purple. And it's just it's crazy to me, like that we're putting people's jobs, we're putting kids' mental health, their physical health, for political reasons.
Yeah, I don't know if this would be happening, say if it was 2021.
Right.
I don't know if this would be happening. See, I was listening to a good podcast. Well, I was actually listening to Glenn Beck, but then he was talking about James Altucher. I think it's how you say his name, James Altucher. And he was talking about New York. And he said, in the 70s, it was horrible. It made a comeback. And New York's always made comebacks, right?
Right.
He said, they're not making a comeback. They're not going to make a comeback because he said, you look at the leases and they're down 35%, comparatively speaking to what they were, say, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. I would have hated, I've heard people say this. They solidified a lease for a year in New York City right before COVID. And then 35% down. Now, the leases I could go get the same place 35%, 40% less than they did and lock it in, which would probably even go down more. But he's saying they're moving to Florida. They're moving to Texas. He said, we're talking major businesses, been there a long time. They're leaving. They're not coming back. And then you have Texas and Florida and Oklahoma and places that are going, yeah, but, don't bring your liberal thinking.
Right.
And I guess I'm a little concerned about that, but I'm not really. It was like, why would you leave if it was really that great, why would you leave? But they're a very interesting crowd, the liberals, the left. They don't want to stay where they claim that, it's great to be a liberal. Then why are you moving? Why would you move to Oklahoma?
Right.
Why would you move to Oklahoma? That's the last place a liberal wants to live.
Because there's a job there. That's why.
That's the only reason. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's why. And have you ever stopped to think why there's a job in Oklahoma and there's not a job in New York?
Right.
The same thing's happening in Utah with California. And we've got Utah is the lowest unemployment rate in the country right now, and because we're playing even sports. We've got I've got it just in my classes. I've got a girl from Michigan. I've got 2 boys from Portland, Oregon, who came here because we're in school and they get to participate in, their activities.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, but California is funny that way, because they'll leave California, they'll come to Texas, or they'll come to Utah, and they continue to vote the way they voted in California. And you say, what are you doing?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. If it never worked, I mean, it is a definition of insanity. I mean, they keep going back to what they think is right, and I'm like, so you want Utah to not have any jobs? That's basically what you're, by voting the way you're voting, which I don't know, probably be hard to find a Democrat to vote for in Utah, but I'm sure they're there. We have some here too. I mean, but in Oklahoma, we had our 5th district. I think it was our 5th district. Congress went blue, but I think she's gonna be a one-termer. Everything else around her obviously went red, but all 77 counties voted Trump and went red.
Salt Lake County is pretty blue.
Yeah.
And so there is a Congressman, McAdams, that's a Democrat from Utah. He's being challenged this time around, and he's going to have a tough go at it but before him it was Mia Love, and it was a black female Republican, right? And,
yeah.
She had, I felt like she had a unique opportunity to really.
Attention, hey, there is a gold Ford Ranger parked in the range. If you have a gold Ford Ranger, please go and move your car right now. They are going to tow the car in 5 minutes.
So somebody's about to get towed. It's not my car.
Yeah. I'm always nervous about that when I'm somewhere and they bring up the tag. And
your car, otherwise
it's not mine.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but Mia Love, and she struggled as a politician, I think, and so.
Well, I was going to ask whatever happened to her, because I do remember she was like she
got beat by McAdams in the last go round.
That's how it happened. Yeah, we have some really, really solid conservative women running. There's a girl running against Nancy Pelosi, which I don't think is going to win, obviously, not in that district. Hopefully, I'd love to see it, but we have some really sound conservative women running for U.S. Congress and U.S. Senate. So I think we'll see some changes. It's interesting. We're going. It'll be interesting to see if I think Trump will win.
I do too.
A lot of people think I'm crazy about that, but I think not only is he going to win, I think he'll hit 52%. That's a pretty good number to hit. I think he'll hit it.
I have a bet. I have a bet right now with a couple of people that Trump will get 15% of the black vote, and I really feel like a lot of the racial tension that we're seeing right now and that we're experiencing right now is because I think that there was a sense that it was sliding. That there were a lot of black voters that were starting to say, wait a second, what am I doing here? And you say the definition of insanity. You just have to look at Chicago, you have to look at Detroit, and it's like, how long are you going to allow the Democrats to continue to run your city into the ground?
Yeah.
And at what point are you going to say, you know what, let's try something different, And you look at New York, and you mentioned New York. Like, when was New York at its peak? When you had a guy named Rudy Giuliani in there that cleaned up the city.
Oh, he was phenomenal. Yeah. Yeah, he was phenomenal. And then you get this. I mean, man, we have a crazy mayor here in Tulsa right now, but and he claims to be conservative. Everybody knows he's liberal, but I don't want to say he's as bad as Bill de Blasio, but boy, he's an interesting character. But Bill de Blasio, that guy is single-handedly going to run everybody out of New York.
Yes. And what's funny to me though, and this is where, I just marvel at the ignorance. Is how can Andrew Cuomo have the approval rating that he has right now when you look at the decisions that he made that directly impacted the deaths of so many lives in New York,
Yeah.
And, but New York got hit hard. And you say, well, why did New York get hit hard? Because the governor of your state forced sick, positive COVID patients back into the nursing homes.
Yeah.
And gee, I wonder why they got hit so hard.
Well, it's crazy, man. I didn't know much about Cuomo, but I listened to him on Hannity once, and the guy is totally like, I've never seen a person act one way. On a medium, on a platform. He was like, well, I don't always agree with Trump, but I do agree with him here, here, and here, and he sounded almost moderate. Well, then you get him off the show, man, and I mean, he's completely saying something totally backwards. I'm like, I guess people don't catch that, but I was like, I've never seen anything like it.
This is where I think Trump has really struggled in politics because he's not been a politician, right? Mm-hmm. And I think he gets on the phone with a Governor Newsom and he says, all right, this is what we're going to do for you. We're going to send you this. We're going to send you this. What else do you need from me? And and Governor Newsom says, we need this, and he says, all right, we'll make sure it happens. And all right, are you good? Is there anything else that you need from me? And he gets off the phone with Governor Newsom and thinks that, hey, that's great. We get along great. We're doing great with each other. And he sends them all of the supplies that they requested and makes sure that California got what California needed. And then Newsom turns around and says, oh, that guy, he's not doing anything that we asked him to do. And, and he's like, wait a second, what? And I think the same thing happened with Cuomo, and he's getting on the phone with Cuomo and saying, what do you guys need? We'll get it taken care of. And he's a get it done kind of guy. They say, this is what I need. And he gets it done. And then they turn around and say, oh, he's horrible. And, in private conversations, I feel like, these guys are having a civil discussion and a working relationship. And then they can turn to the media and play this game.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening too. That makes sense. Because I had never, Cuomo sounded like, I'd always heard all these horrible things about Cuomo and how much of a liberal he is, this, that, and the other. Then I listened to him on Hannity. I'm like, well, he's not really that bad. And then he turns, literally gets off the show with him and just rips. He says something totally opposite of what he just said 10 minutes ago on a show. And I'm going, if that's politics, I wouldn't be a good politician either. Right. I really wouldn't. But
that's why Donald Trump is not a good politician, though.
No, he's not. But I think this convention, man, has been amazing. This convention is like, if there's not a more stark contrast between two parties, these two conventions, I don't know how. I didn't even watch most of the Republican convention. I've listened to it while I've been driving, and then I'll watch a little bit of it. Other than Kimberly Guilfoyle, I think it's been pretty good. She was just a little loud for me. Her message was right, but wow. She was even the conservatives had an issue with her, but I think it was a stark contrast, the two conventions so far.
Yeah, I agree, and the thing that's the unfortunate thing about this election is it's not about Biden and Trump; it's about Trump and Trump.
It is.
It's whether you hate Trump or you like Trump,
mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of people in the middle there that don't know what to think of Trump, and that's where it could go wrong. But I'm with you. I think that I think Trump will win, and I think he'll win by a pretty decent margin.
Yeah, and it's got me a little. I think it's getting better, but there for a while, people were. I worked for, like I said, a few politicians, and a U.S. congressman I was talking to, he goes, "You really think Trump will hit 52%?" I said, "I really do." I was listening to a guy on Rush Limbaugh fill in. He said that he thinks it's going to be Reagan numbers. I don't think it'll be Reagan numbers, but I do think that he could hit 52. And but this U.S. congressman I was talking to, I said, "Well, what's it like in Washington? Like, how's it feel up there?" He goes, "Oh, and he's a conservative, and he goes, I think it's 50-50 at best for Trump. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, I think it's 50. He said, it's not going to be a vote. It's kind of like what you said. It's not, they're not going to vote for Biden because they like you. They're going to vote for Biden because they don't like Trump. And I said, I just don't think we're going to have as many numbers doing that as people think. I really don't.
Right.
But anyways, so what you're doing, I got to get ready to run here real quick, but what do you on Flow? So is there a new agreement, or is there something you guys have going on with them?
No, I've used track wrestling for quite a number of years, and one of the things I actually had a conversation with, but Justin Tritz, who is at Track Wrestling. I was using Track Wrestling literally since the beginning days when there was probably 10 to 20 tournaments on that software.
Mm-hmm.
And I developed a really good relationship with Justin using his software to run events. And there was no way I would leave Track Wrestling as long as Justin Tritz was with Track Wrestling. But Justin, when he made the decision, he was going to, he sold the business and then he ended up stepping down. And I'm like, all right, now I'm going to do what's best for my event, my tournament. And one of the things that I feel like Flow Wrestling has done for our sport is they promoted our sport in a way that, a lot of people can access information, content, matches, college duels, and a number of opportunities to really expose the sport of wrestling. And so I've felt like, Flow Wrestling is a great way to create exposure for the sport. But if I run a wrestling tournament, it's a great way for me to expose my event.
Yeah. Yeah, I have mixed feelings on Flow. I think there needs to be more. I think we're at the early stages of media for wrestling. I think there needs to be more competition, which will make better products.
Sure.
I was with you. I like track. I always loved track. It was easy to navigate. It was easy to use. A lot of people, when we're at, here in Tulsa, Tulsa Nationals kickoff, they're always griping about, how the brackets aren't as easy to navigate, this, that, and the other, which I don't have an issue with it. But, I think Flow, from a standpoint, obviously this year they're lacking in content because there is no content. There's no content now to be had in the summer and from COVID. So of course that, but I think they've done they've definitely played their part in wrestling. I don't think most people would know about wrestling, or they've really exposed wrestling in a good way, I believe.
Yeah, and I think they've tried to, create. Wrestling will never be MMA in the sense that, like, I don't know if you saw that interview between Dake and Burroughs, right? And it's almost like they're trying to create controversy, and wrestlers we're not. That's not who we are. We don't talk crap on our opponent. We have too much respect for our opponent, and they're trying. I think they're, in some ways, they're trying to create a little bit of that drama to create, news, and I don't know that wrestling will ever go to the extreme, obviously, of what MMA does with McGregor and some of the characters that you have in MMA. But I would watch Henry Cejudo in the MMA world, and he was trying to play this, this controversial figure, and it's like that's not Henry.
Not him at all.
No, he's such a good guy. And
I heard people talk about the Dake Burroughs deal, and I don't think I think people got put off by that. I don't think people really like that. There was just it just didn't look good. And I think it would help Flow a little bit if maybe they had a little bit more understanding of wrestling. They're good media, but as far as it's hard, it'd be like me trying to talk about basketball. There's no way it wouldn't come across right. But like I said, I guess there's a new one though, right? Rockfin or whatever. It's a new one coming out, or it's been around. They're putting out media on wrestling. ROKFIN, I think. And it's pretty interesting. I think it has a possibility because it's user generated content. So like if you wanted to go have your own camps on there, then they pay X amount per month or whatever. I think that's a pretty interesting concept. But Flow's, they were the only play in town for a while. I mean, even Track had it wasn't the same thing, but anyways, so what do you guys have coming up? And do you have any, are there any tournaments at all or?
Yeah, so we have one in September. And it's kind of a preseason tournament. Yeah, and we're kind of waiting for the Utah High School Activities Association to know exactly what our high school season is going to look like. As of now, we'll start our season in November as planned, but it'll be interesting to see. There's been some talk about limiting the number of teams at a tournament, limiting how many, to 1-day tournaments instead of 2-day tournaments, and that's a big part of the reason why I've said, look, I'm not going to wait for a government agency to make the decision as to whether I'm going to hold my event or not. I'm going to move forward in a way that we can have this event and put it on as it's happened for years now.
Right. So. I think in Oklahoma, the talk has been they're going to try to keep it the same, but if they push it back, the issue I have with pushing it back is that you may have the World Trials in April for cadet and juniors in Vegas. So, I mean, that's not good if you're going to push it back to where your state tournament's in March going into April. I don't like that. In Oklahoma, they've talked about, well, say we just do district duels, dual state, regionals, and state.
But this is what's crazy to me, and I like somebody tell me the logic of what's going to be different 2 months from now.
I know.
Because there's an election in November. Is that and I completely predict that in November, COVID ain't going away. It'll be here. It's going to be with us, right? It's something we're going to learn to live with and learn to deal with. The question is, will the media hysteria and the hype and the fear and will that continue to be perpetuated after the election? And I don't.
You would think, man, the media would just exhaust. It's not like, how are they not exhausted? I mean, how are they not exhausted at this point? Because right now we're not hearing much about COVID right now. Like for the last week or week and a half, I've just noticed we haven't been hearing hardly anything about it.
That's because you got riots going on and you got Black Lives Matter, and there's a bigger, more important narrative that can help move our narrative forward right now. But when that narrative runs dry again, it'll be back.
Yeah. So I do think if Trump does win, for sure we're 4 more years of just I mean, they're going to be attacking him. And I think that's what people are afraid of. Like, well, maybe if Joe Biden wins, we wouldn't have all these attacks. And I'm like, dude, you don't even want to know what it would be like if you have him in. So
right, but the thing that I keep thinking is, yeah, we got 4 more years of Trump, but I think following that, it'll be interesting to see. I'm a Nikki Haley fan.
I like Nikki Haley, and I like Kristi Noem out of South Dakota.
Sure, but I don't. I look at Nikki Haley and I say, gosh, if you put her on the ticket, it'll be interesting to see what the media does with her.
It would be, wouldn't it? Because what are they going to attack? I mean, I'm sure
they still will. They absolutely will try, but will it backfire on them?
Yep.
Trump's an easy target. He's not well spoken. He says a lot of stupid things.
Yep.
But she's classy. She's smart. She's a woman. She's she's got, I think, Indian parents, right? I think she's and it's like, so what are you gonna go after?
Yep.
Well,
that'd be they'll attack something on her for sure.
Oh, for sure.
I got a meeting coming up here. I wanted, like I said, I've wanted in my podcast, we'll bring entrepreneurs on, sometimes a politician, but then wrestling, it's hard for me not to bring a wrestling, mind on, because a lot of my friends are wrestlers and entrepreneurs. So it's like and there's some good wrestlers that have turned into some really good entrepreneurs. So that's what my show ends up being. So it was just fun having you on, and it was kind of like at the last minute, but I'm like, let's do it, and
right on.
So if people want to follow you on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, are you on all of those, or are you just on a couple of them? Or
Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
On Facebook, if they're looking for my wrestling tournament, it's the Rumble or Rockwell Rumble. And just my personal page, just my name, Cole Kelley. But if on Instagram, I don't do a lot on Instagram, so I'm
not TikTok. I mean, there's still people there, right?
Yeah, it's Mr. Cole Kelley.
Mr. Cole Kelley at TikTok. Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Hopefully, I guess an American company will buy them, or
that's opened some doors for me and created some opportunities. So I'm pretty excited about some of the opportunities it's opened up.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I saw your numbers on there. It's amazing. So, well, Cole, I appreciate you being on, and
thanks for having me.
Thank you. You have a good day.
We'll see you.